Biden didn't recognize George Clooney at 2024 fundraiser, new book says. George Clooney, huh? That's crazy. Backstage before the fundraiser, Clooney greeted the president when he arrived after a 3-day trip to Italy for the G7 conference. The president appeared, quote, severely diminished, as if he'd aged a decade since Clooney last saw him in December 2022, the authors write in an excerpt of the book. You know George, the assisting aide told the president, gently reminding him who was in front of him. Yeah, the president said to one of the most recognizable men in the world, the host of this lucrative fundraiser. Thank you for being here. It seemed clear that the president had not recognized Clooney, Tapper and Thompson write. The excerpt was published from Tapper and Thompson's new book, Original Sin, President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again, which will be released on May 20th. Based on more than 200 interviews, mostly with Democratic insiders. I can't believe it. I might actually buy that, because I hate the Democrats, and I want to hate them more. I want to maximize that emotional impulse. You know, Clooney was shaken to his core by the interaction with a man he'd known for years. Tapper and Thompson report. The interaction helps explain the motivation for Clooney to release an op-ed less than a month later calling on Biden to drop out of the race. Oh, yeah. Damn, that's dude, his brief interaction with Joe Biden was so bad that he wrote an op-ed calling for him to drop out. That's how bad it was. Jesus, man. The actor had been shocked by a letter Biden released on July 8th insisting he was staying in the race. He reached out to Barack Obama to tell him he was considering writing the op-ed. Obama advised that doing so would only make Biden dig his heels in deeper. Jesus. Is Paul's ego the most vindicated man of all time? Does he have any favorite numbers I could punch in as like lottery ticket numbers? It's crazy. After Clooney wrote a draft, he shared it with Jeffrey Katzenberg, major Democratic donor who organized the June fundraiser, and told Katzenberg to share it with Biden's longtime aide, Steve Ricchetti, the authors write. Ricchetti read it and was furious, Tapper and Thompson report. Internally, he threatened to shut Clooney down. Some of his colleagues thought he sounded like a mob boss. This is where Democratic power goes. Republican power goes towards building party unity by threatening their own to make sure they all fall in line behind the president's vision. Democratic power goes towards protecting their own against anything, even effectiveness. That's the only time the Democrats exercise power. Any rule can be bent as long as it's being bent in the service of protecting Democratic insiders and their cushy jobs. It has nothing to do with power. It has nothing to do with political effectiveness. That's the only time they're willing to do anything. Another wedding guest who sat at Schumer's table recalled him saying, if things go south of the debate, me, Barack, Nancy, and Akeem have a plan B, though Schumer would later deny it, the authors write. We got so screwed by Biden as a party, David Plouffe, a former top Obama campaign aide who helped run Kamala Harris's campaign after Biden dropped out, told Tapper and Thompson. And it's all Biden, Plouffe said. By deciding to run for re-election and then waiting more than 3 weeks after the debate to bow out, Plouffe added, he totally f***ed us. Genuinely insane. What is their plan B? Kamala Harris. Genuinely insane. No wonder nobody else is coming to Biden's defense now that he's in the public eye. A bunch of the people who might have otherwise spoken publicly are probably in the damn book that's coming out. Original Sin, President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again. Damn, that's the title. They're not pulling punches. They're definitely not pulling punches. I don't get it. Who buys these books? I never understood the market for books. Literate people buy books and read books. It's a way of having information communicated to you. You know how sometimes I read articles on stream? A book is like that, but longer. Vosh pretending he reads. I said literate people. I didn't include myself. DNC subcommittee recommends redoing vice chair elections. Yeah, looks like it. They're so upset with David Hogg trying to primary useless members of Congress that they're looking to redo the vice chair elections and replace him, which is, you know, that's how you instill trust in a neutral Democratic Party. When you don't like the outcome of an election for your administration, you redo it. The DNC's Credentials Subcommittee has recommended that the party should once again hold vice chair elections over complaints there were issues with how the balloting was conducted. And you're never going to guess, folks, the excuse that they're using for why the election should be redone for the vice chair, oh, it's not because they don't like David Hogg. It's because of, like, wokeness or something. There's some women who are saying that, like, the results of the election weren't woke enough. Like, it was supposed to be a woman or something. I don't really care. The results are what the results are. Wade Hogg is the one pushing to primary useless incumbents. Yeah, I don't really trust him that much, but like the fact that the DNC is reacting this way to what is essentially a push to do, like, get the do-nothings and nobodies out of the way, you know, feels pretty dead.
The DNC vice chair and that message that he has, as Avery mentioned, out with the old in with the new. That is what DNC Vice Chair David Hogg is saying. His group, Leaders We Deserve, is planning to spend $20 million to boost young primary challengers against Democratic incumbents. This as Dems try to find their way a little bit out of the woods after that 2024 defeat. But are these new fresh faces the answer? Well, DNC Vice Chair David Hogg joins me now to talk about all of that. Welcome in, David. Always good to have you.
You know, it kind of freakish, but David Hogg looks a little bit like Charlie Kirk to me. There is like a phrenological similarity there that I find a little disquieting. Maybe that's why I don't trust him.
Well, I guess I want to ask, how are you making the choice of who to endorse? Is age the only factor here? And also, how are you making the choice of who to challenge in a primary?
Absolutely. Well, look, I think the first most important thing here is to understand it isn't necessarily just out with the old and in with the new. I would say it's out with the ineffective and in with the effective. That is what we are doing here. Far too many people in our party, our approvals are awful right now. Any person that has eyes can see that. We are at 27% approval with our base, and we need dramatic change. I've talked to thousands of people around the country that are demanding that.
It genuinely, the fact that this is even a discussion, like the fact that there's any debate at all over the idea that there should be standards for being a part of the Democratic Party, and that if you're ineffective, you should be replaced with people who are effective, when the country's being torn apart like in an unprecedented fashion by a fascist administration, and when the party is experiencing record low approval ratings. The fact that this is controversial is unbelievable. And keep in mind, it's only controversial within the ranks of the Democratic Party. I guarantee you the average Democratic voter right now, if posed the question, hey, do you think we should primary useless safe seat Democrats who won't stand up to Trump with people who will? They would say yes. I can't imagine the average Democratic voter would disagree with that prospect. It's just that this entire fucking party is a Make-A-Wish Foundation project to the elderly. It's a program to reward them for longevity and for loyalty. A lot of these people, a lot of the elected officials within the Democratic Party legitimately just think of their job as like a rote bureaucratic middleman position where they exist to maintain the status quo and do nothing else. And they are being blindsided right now by the realization that they actually have to do politics and that a lot of lives are on the line. Like, this didn't even occur to them. It hasn't occurred to them for decades. There were a lot of neocons, a lot of like rhinos early on in the first Trump administration who also felt that way. The difference is their party, the Republican Party, shaped up and started threatening them and forcing them into line, which is, from a political perspective, exactly what they should have done. People either got forced out or they were forced to shape up. And now they don't have that problem. Now the entire Republican Party is a lockstep, unified, fascist political bloc, which is bad for us. But politically, it was very smart of them. Democrats are 8 years late to this. 8 years late. They still haven't made the switch. A lot of their members still think because Biden won, because Biden won, man. Because Biden won in 2020. They thought Trump was an anomaly. They thought, oh, thank God, I thought things were going to be different. But now they're not going to be. The long nightmare is over.
Change. And the work that we're doing here is not just to help elect better people in a lot of these cases challenging incumbent Democrats. It's also to help younger people that are running in open blue seats and in competitive races as well. We're not challenging people that are running in frontline districts that could risk us potentially losing the House. But ultimately, we know that our party has to do a much better job of showing our base that we are here to fight for them. And we're seeing the results of that. People like AOC, Chris Murphy, Senator Van Hollen, others around the country are fighters that are on the front lines out there showing people what we're doing to stand up and fight back against Donald Trump's agenda, are raising incredible amounts of money. And that is going to be super important going forward to help candidates around the country, especially in our frontline districts as well, because people want to see that we are fighting for them. And far too many of our young people feel like we've given up on them. They feel like we're not here fighting for them. And they feel like the American dream is
I want AOC to put on a pair of raw selfish denim.
To revive it.
What's your criteria? What districts would you pick to focus on, and what districts would you not? I'll give you a good example. Would you support, for example, AOC, who you just mentioned, in a primary against Chuck Schumer for Senate?
Well, this cycle, we're focused on House seats in particular. Those are the types of seats that we are focused on because we want to be as effective as possible in helping to give these young people a chance. A lot of the candidates we're working with are under the the age of 35. So as you can imagine, working with Senate candidates that becomes a little more difficult. But really what we're looking at here is not just, oh, is this an older person? Like, there are older people that are very effective in our party too. People like Nancy Pelosi and Jan Schakowsky and others.
Answer the specific question. The specific question is a trap. Obviously, Schumer is extremely unpopular and also a collaborationist and a fascist piece of shit, and he will rot in hell after he dies. But he is also the Senate minority leader. So what he's trying to do is get Hogg to essentially say that he stands against the very wealthy and powerful Senate minority leader. It's a trap. This interviewer is not being honest, at least not sympathetic to the cause.
Others, I would argue, been some of our most
Is Chuck Schumer a name that you'd put in that bid?
See,
as someone who's a
see this shit? He's not actually talking about the underlying argument or the point. He's essentially saying, oh, so as a logical extrapolation of your argument, you're saying that you're making an enemy of this very powerful insider Democrat? You're saying you're making an enemy of him? You want to go up against Chuck Schumer, the Wall Street Senate Democrat? You wanna? Oh, you wanna? That's what he's doing. Fuck this piece of shit.
effective and older in the party?
You know, there's certainly disagreements in our party right now of certain tactics.
That doesn't sound like a yes.
See, this is like this guy is an agent of the enemy. This guy is as much our enemy as anybody on Fox News.
For sure. But I will say we're in a really difficult position right now. We're in the minority in our party, and there's disagreements over how to handle that. Certainly, I have my disagreements with the leader at times, but ultimately, we have to realize that we're all on the same side here of moving our party forward and getting back into the majority. And sometimes that's going to include having disagreements with what our leadership is doing. But ultimately, that's part of what makes our party great. We're not a cult. We allow disagreement, and we're not led by a strong man like Donald Trump, who says, if you don't agree with me, there is no place for you here in the party. And certainly, there are people who don't agree with me in doing these tactics either. But ultimately, I know we're all on the same side here of getting back to winning, and everybody wants to see a party that fights for them.
David, you mentioned there are some folks who don't agree with you here. I mean, Ken Martin, chair of the DNC, has said that it's not the party's position to take sides in a primary. I want to put on your screen something that Sheldon Whitehouse said on ABC's This Week just last month. You see it there. We are in a fight for our democracy. He goes on to say you can't fight in the dugout when you're trying to score runs on the field. So I guess my question is, what do you say to those who say you're hurting the Democratic Party here by what you're doing?
See, like, this interviewer is obviously not on his side. The argument is, at its face value, ridiculous. We're talking about rooting out the ineffective members of Congress. Like, these people are doing anything to begin with. Their existence in the party is the reason we lost to Trump.
What I would say to them is look at the results of the people that are out there fighting right now, the people that are on the front lines that are leading.
Real affirmation of the fact, though, that the real enemy to these people is the left, not Republicans. They will be ineffective against Republicans, but when there's any threat from like left populists taking over safe seats in the party, that's when they freak out, plant their feet, and act like this is the existential threat to the party. That's when they start redoing elections to unseat people in the vice chair seat.
The charge like AOC, Bernie Sanders, people like Chris Murphy and others, they are raising incredible amounts of money that is going to be essential, because we're getting emails every day to our organization, and I know campaigns around the country are getting emails saying, if you don't dramatically change things in your party, I'm not going to support you, I'm not going to donate. And that is an existential threat to everybody in our party, and making sure that we're able to come into a majority. And what I would say to that baseball metaphor in particular is, look, if you have a team that is failing to, get on base, you need some new players, and making sure that you're not threatening the House majority while doing that is incredibly important. And that is why we're not challenging Democratic incumbents that are in very competitive seats in the general election. But we know that our party is the Democratic Party. We know that we need our base to know that we're here to fight for them. And we've seen incredible examples, whether it's Hakeem Jeffries, who got involved through multiple Democratic primaries, whether it's AOC or even people like Cory Booker. Our party has had an openness for a long time to this. And this idea that the litmus test of who should be in a position is dependent on how long they have been there is ridiculous. It should be how effective have they been while being there.
That was a pretty smart response from Hogg there. Not only playing with the sports metaphor and doing a good job of rebutting it as well, but also praising Hakeem Jeffries, someone who I and he knows to be ineffective in like a specific context. Because again, like the accusation that's being implicitly thrown out by the interviewer is, oh, so you want to unseat the big boys, like, you know, you want to guarantee your own downfall then. All right. So it's a smart response, you know. Good instincts, I think. Yeah, Hogg's been in the front lines for a while. You know, it makes sense that he would develop a good instinct for understanding when he's being met with this kind of behavior. Hogg's trying to save face for corruption. His PAC spent $12K on congressional runs in 2024, while 80% went to consults. Yeah, so that's, I said earlier, I don't necessarily trust Hogg. It seems like he's had some ineffective spending on a PAC before. I'm mostly talking about like the sentiment that he's expressing here, not necessarily the PAC that he specifically has run. This isn't a matter of having an attention span. It's ironic that you would accuse us of not having one when I said, like, at the beginning of this bit that I don't necessarily trust Hogg, so it seems like you're the one who needs to pay attention. I support the argument. Also, keep in mind that, like, we're talking about national elections here. We're talking about billions and billions of dollars circulating. If some money gets misappropriated or consultants get made wealthy, great, that's the Democratic Party for you. But please, God, we need to do something about the Democratic Party. Like, Jesus, like, we're in such a bad position right now, you know? Like, it's basically it's like kind of the end of the country, right? Not to be dramatic or anything, but like, it's just going to be more of this with no end in sight. Just a nonstop, all of our civil services eroding, everything getting worse, income inequality getting worse, reactionary sentiments getting normalized because capital owners front it disingenuously to use it as an excuse for why the country's being more and more deprived. Like, it could go on like this for decades. I don't think it's overly dramatic. I mean, I think like we've seen this happen to countries in real life before. We didn't expect it would happen here, but hey, that's life. I'm just saying, like, I'm not really in a position to go like, oh, well, this person who's suggesting reform within the one political party that has the, you know, national apparatus capable of stopping them is personally been ineffective in his, you know, PAC contributions. Like, okay, yeah, I know. I'm taking that into account.
David Hogg, vice chair of the DNC. David.
That is who he is. Say it, don't spray it. Hogg argued that because of his announcement that his organization would support primary challengers, the DNC has, quote, made it clear they were going to remove me. I ran to be DNC vice chair to help make the Democratic Party better, not to defend an indefensible status quo that has caused voters in almost every demographic group to move away from us. The DNC has pledged to remove me, and this vote has provided an avenue to fast-track that effort. In response to the decision, DNC chair Ken Martin said he was, quote, disappointed to learn that before I became chair, there was a procedural error in the February vice chair election. What a snake, dude. Are you kidding me? That's all. That's Ken Martin saying, oh, it is with deep personal sorrow that I learn of the fact that regrettably we're going to have to redo those elections on the people of David Hogg's seat, the guy who's challenging me. Has Wickler made a statement on this stuff? No, he's out. Genuinely feels like the Dems just want us to die. It's all institutions exist to serve themselves. And for the Democrats, that's just like a, you know, a retirement program for a few 180-somethings. That's the program. Yeah, it's not that they want you to die. It's just they don't care about you. Republicans want you to die. Sorry, I'm just looking at Ken Martin's Twitter, where the chair of the DNC barely posts. The last thing he posted was a retweet of Vice Chair Kenyatta's statement on Trump, which is great and all, not really reserving much in the way of good words for Hogg. Why do Dems keep doing this game of calling out rule breaking but not doing anything to stop it? Well, Dems don't have a lot of power right now, but even if they did, they just don't really believe in doing politics. Who are the, I really quickly, I want to find out, the women who are contesting the results of the vice chair election. There were like 3 women who said that they were mistreated or they weren't given fair consideration because they're women and it needs to be like gender equal or something. Kaylin Free, an attorney from Oklahoma who failed to secure a vice chair position during the February election, filed a complaint alleging the DNC improperly combined 2 separate questions into a single vote. A structure, she said, disadvantaged female candidates under the party's gender parity rules. I don't care. I can't find much about the Kaylin Free person, apart from the fact that she looks woke, allegedly. See? Wokeness? Women are woke. You know that's right. Does she even have socials? Wait, I think I found something. At least a little something. I spoke with Kaylin Free, who was challenging David Hogg's DNC spot long before he pledged to spend $20 million funding challenges. This challenge is separate and apart from what Mr. Hogg has said in the last 2 weeks. Well, I guess it's good that she's not like the disagreement comes before the thing that's trying to oust, or the you know, the drama that's leading to the ousting of David Hogg. That being said, she does say, we are losing rural America and I know how to win in rural America. That is what I'd be campaigning on, which is like the worst possible thing. In 2024, Donald Trump won with every single demographic. Every demographic Every single one, with the exception of like highly educated women or something, shifted to the right. Why would you go after the most inaccessible, most like it's just more of the like delusional DNC fetishism of the idea that, you know, you can win by like reaching out to the direct opposition, as opposed to like building a party that actually speaks to something and inspires Americans in general. The classic Chuck Schumer, yeah, for every like progressive we lose, we'll pick up two like middle class centrist voters in rural Pennsylvania or something. They really do believe non-voters will never vote, don't they? Yeah, they just don't believe in anything. In her complaint, shared with Semaphore by a Democratic source, Free argued she lost a fatally flawed election that violated the DNC charter and discriminated against 3 women of color candidates, and asks for 2 new vice chair elections. In February, after several rounds of voting, the race came down to 5 candidates: Kenyatta, Hogg, Free, and 2 other women. Kenyatta and Hogg claimed the open spots. By aggregating votes across ballots and failing to distinguish between gender categories in a meaningful way, the DNC's process violated its own charter and bylaws, undermining both fairness and gender diversity, argued Free, a citizen of Choctaw Nation. So it was Hogg and 4 women. No, Hogg, another guy, and 3 women, and the 2 men won. I guess it just feels like we have bigger things on our plate right now than enforcing gender parity. So do-nothing moderates can run the DNC because they're women, in my opinion.
Sometimes it's not just a messaging problem that you have, it's a broader messenger problem that you have in the first place. And what we're trying to do is bring in some new messengers that are not only more equipped to fight in this moment against Donald Trump and build the Democratic Party into being a true opposition party. We're also trying to make sure that we're giving voters the best options that they can in our safer blue districts while supporting candidates that are in purple districts at the same time.
David Hogg, Vice Chairman of the Democratic National Committee.
Too bad. My quality bad. An hour-long Dave Rubin stream saying David Hogg regrets Real Time with Bill Maher interview as Dems oust him as DNC head. Okay.
He would, just putting aside, I don't know, probably not, but this national committee. And this seemed rather odd because he's basically just a kid who has he's just never accomplished anything. Like, do you want someone who's at 19 years old is a lifelong politician? That is a massive indictment of our party. Last month, my organization announced that it would primary ineffective members of Congress who are not meeting the moment. But you might want to take someone who's probably between, say, 40 and 60 and has some life experience.
People especially get by so that they're able to focus on their lives and, you know, getting with a young woman or something like that instead of how are they going to pay their rent, for example, or how are they working their 2 jobs. Young people should be able to focus on what young people should be focused on, which is how to get laid and how to go and have fun.
Us to hell, right? It's not somebody saying, I'm doing bad, join me on my quest for evil. That's just not how it works. Now, interestingly, he does say, and it got a laugh, and there's something to it, that at the end of the day, young people, you want just like a flourishing thing, you don't have to worry about your 2 jobs, so you could go get laid. Now, I say on the show all the time.
That's a fun quote. Yeah, it's also like obviously true, right? It definitely doesn't help the Democrats that the Democratic Party comes across as like boring and sexless. It does. It 100% does. Not just the politicians, I mean, but the messaging. That's not just a wokeness thing or whatever, but like it's obviously true. It comes with the technocracy. It's like a dickless ideology, basically. You know, you need a captivating narrative about how you're promoting like goodness in life, not just minor decreases in like mortgage interest rates or whatever. That doesn't captivate people. Sometimes the way Democrats talk, they talk like accountants getting really, really excited describing the benefits of the new credit card they just got, and nobody knows what the they're talking about. They're like, yeah, I get like 10% back, 10% cash back when I spend this card on affiliated hotels. And it also applies to anything I buy at the restaurants at the hotels. People are like, that's really cool, man. Do you want to like play your game, or are we just gonna, are we done bowling? You know, it's just, it doesn't hold people. That's how they write policy too. Yeah. Maybe the class divides are too wide. It doesn't have to do with class divides. It just has to do with like the general approach. Republicans have a holistic approach to politics. That is to say, Republican messaging from their grifters up to the top. Well, they're all grifters, I guess, but from the bottom to the top, their messaging is holistic. Every element of your life is covered by Republican ideology. How should you be dressing, flirting, spending your time? Should you be exercising? What hobbies are okay or not okay to have? How should you be saving, spending, whatever? It's all covered. Democrats, not so much. Democrats have a set of principles, and they're mostly about like basic fiscal policy and maybe a few social policies. Apart from that, it's do what you want. you know? They don't really have doctrine that stretches from bottom to top, you know?